investigation, did you become aware of any new victims who were alleging sexual abuse by Jerry Sandusky that happened after the case was transferred to the Office of Attorney General?
I think that was outside the scope of my responsibilities. My responsibilities were to look at what happened through charging in November 2011. I think there's an answer to that question from the office.
I'll take that. Yes, we do have two individuals who indicated that they were abused by Sandusky both in the fall of 2009.
Brad? Well, could you elaborate on that? I mean, what happened? Did you investigate those cases then?
Those cases were already known before I took office.
Well, the follow-up question I have is sort of
Are they new victims?
Yeah.
Did he reoffend while the investigation was going on? Is that what you've now said?
The Office of Attorney General received the case in March of 2009, and two individuals indicated that they were abused by Sandusky sexually in the fall of 2009.
That figured in the prosecution?
They're not.
Well, are there going to be charges related to those two, or where do those cases stand?
Besides, as you all know, and as you also have the respect for the victims of child sexual abuse that we do, we don't want to give any identifying information for these individuals. Because Sandusky is in jail, there were also victims that we found that were not found previously, and those victims have indicated that because he is in jail and the appeal went well for the Office of Attorney General, they do not wish to prosecute at this time.
How many of those victims are there out there? So you said two, and then you just mentioned that there are even others. There are more.
Yes, but let's keep it straight. There's two separate questions here. There is a question as to whether anybody indicated that they were abused by Sandusky after the Office of Attorney General received the referral in March of 2009 and while Sandusky was walking the streets. The answer to that question is two individuals have indicated that they were abused by Sandusky in the fall of 2009. Your other question is, well, besides the victims that are already known and prosecuted, did Sandusky victimize even more, whether that was even in the 1990s? And the answer to that question is yes. But the victims that we know about as far as the fall of 2009, that's as far as we know.
2009, were they part of the civil litigation that you're aware of? Did they get remuneration of any sort?
Brad, I can't give you any more identifiable information about the victims.
Yes, about the two victims that indicated they were abused in the fall of 2009, I just wanted to ask you, so was there any investigation done as to the credibility of those persons' allegations, and do you believe they're founded? Do you believe they were credible to the point where law enforcement could have pursued them? Because the reason I ask that is I remember that there was one story about somebody that came forward and it was indicated that it may not have been founded. And so can you tell me what your thoughts are about the credibility of those two allegations?
I'm not going to discuss the credibility of sexual abuse victims until they are found by a jury to be uncredible or incredible. The victims of sexual assault, when they tell us they're the victims of sexual assault, and unless we have anything to the contrary, we believe them. They were known by the prior team. We found out about them when I came into office, and any other identifiable information, whether they were the part of a civil suit, whether they were, whether the prior team made any decisions as to their credibility, I'm not going to discuss.
Mr. Moulton, as someone intimately familiar with the investigation as it played out, starting actually the timeline begins in the fall of 2008, is it conceivable to you that if the investigation had been executed at whatever level in a different way, that the two victims who say that they were abused or assaulted, in the fall of 2009, that either or both of those might not have happened?
Well, I think that lots of choices got made here. One of the choices that got made really both by the two district attorneys who had the case briefly and by the Office of Attorney General right at the beginning in March 2009, the choice was made that we're going to investigate further before we bring charges. Had that decision not been made, had he been charged right at the outset, then I don't know. I mean, if he'd been charged right at the outset, then there would have been a greater level of public awareness that that he was a child molester. Now, he was released on bail, as it turned out, in 2010. But sure, if the case had been charged sooner, it could have been charged. Could it have been charged before 2009? Yes, people could have made the decision to charge right away. Well, I think the people who were involved in the investigation, the investigators who spoke to us, and the prosecutors, all of whom spoke to us, were aware of the risk. Right? They were aware that he might be continuing to offend, and they hoped that the fact that he was aware of the investigation would make that less likely. And they concluded that the risk of a failed prosecution was greater than the risk posed by that. So they did have those discussions.
Madam Attorney General, do you believe those victims who come forward in the fall of 2009 would not have been abused had this investigation gone more quickly?
If different steps were taken, if the course of action was taken that the search warrant would have been issued and executed, which could have been executed under seal right away, based upon the statements of victim one, then they would have found the corroborating evidence that they felt necessary for victim one. They also would have found the additional victims that they also felt necessary, would have made the case stronger. If that had happened, then Sandusky would have been charged earlier, no doubt. Now, you're going to have prosecutors coming out of the woodwork saying, well, we feel that the grand jury was the better choice. Okay, if you make that choice that the grand jury is the better choice and you go that route, then use the tools of the grand jury. You have to use all the tools necessary, because there's a real difference between making sure that the streets are safe from a sexual offender and building a winnable case. You have to make that decision. Different prosecutors make different decisions. I would have made a different decision.
And so the two people who come forward in the fall would not have been abused had they made the decision that you're now advocating?
Logically speaking, if different tactics were taken and a different route was chosen, and Sandusky was in jail with bail, by the way, if bail hadn't been that he was released on, with a cash amount, if he was in jail, of course, there wouldn't be more victims, of course. I am saying that we have a factual report in front of us. This factual report indicates that there are long periods of time where nothing happened. There are long periods of delays that we can't explain. This report also indicates factually that key investigative steps were not taken early on. For example, the search warrant. And because of that, the case took longer than it could have or should have. What this report also indicates, this factual, unbiased report indicates that the reasons put forth, Mr. Moulton's reasons put forth of, well, why did they take these certain tactics? Why did they use the grand jury? Why did they not issue the search warrant? Indicates that there wasn't that sense of urgency to get Sandusky off of the streets that other prosecutors may have had, and therefore chosen different courses of action. Geoff's factual report indicates that there were long periods of delays and there were investigative steps that weren't taken that could have given not only a different result, but could have done it in less period of time. I would have done it. I would have issued a search warrant. Whether that's, hold on one second. So the question was, does the buck stop with the Attorney General? The buck always stops with the leader. What it appeared to be is that there was a lack of urgency on the part of leadership. Why? We don't know that. That's going to be up to the public to decide.
Steve, hold on. Steve, I got a question.
Why were so many troopers transferred off the case? Is that normal procedure, and is it normal procedure for the next trooper to re-interview the victims?
I think that's a better question for Mr. Moulton, since he went through the transfer of the troopers.
In terms of why that happened, that unfortunately is something. The transfers are something that I don't have the answer to because I couldn't interview those folks. With respect to the victims that she's mentioned, the people who allege that they were victimized in the fall of 2009, I think my understanding of the facts is that those are folks who, during the course of the investigation, and I think not before 2011, investigators learned about. So I don't think there's no suggestion that folks knew in the fall of 2009 that these additional victims existed. They believed there were additional victims, but they didn't come to light until 2011. The investigation, as far as I'm aware, the investigation was not aware of any additional victim besides victim one until the Mike McQuarrie. That was the first one.